6 here on the programme. Let's cross over to Chriselda Lewis to take our top story this morning that we're all following. She is standing outside the home of Arnold Pistorius. That, of course, is the uncle of Oscar Pistorius. This is in Waterkloof, where Oscar Pistorius will be living under house arrest. We had confirmation overnight that Oscar Pistorius has been released. Chriselda, were we all taken surprised as all of us this morning? We were expecting it to happen this morning, not last night.
Well, that's right, Leanne. What we do know now officially is that Oscar Pistorius was released from the Kgoshi prison at about 7:30 last night, certainly taking the world by surprise. Of course, you'd recall last week that through the Department of Correctional Services, the parole board had made the announcement that Oscar Pistorius was initially supposed to be released from the Kgoshi prison after serving just 1 day less of a year in prison for shooting and killing Reeva Steenkamp, that he was scheduled to be released today. But this came quite early yesterday. What we do understand by this at the moment is that we posed questions to the Department of Correctional Services about why this release was taking place so early, earlier than scheduled. And what we're hearing from the Department of Correctional Services, the head office, they said it was totally up to the discretion of the Kgoshi officials, and that they believe that all the procedures were followed, and that the department's officials at Kgoshi had taken into account the rights of the victim, of the offender, as well as the Department of Correctional Services. But what we do understand as well, Leanne, is that there were scheduled protests that were going to take place this morning outside Kgoshi from a group that were calling for Oscar Pistorius not to be released from prison. So certainly the speculation has it at this point is that perhaps the department was trying to avoid the media frenzy that we've seen since this saga began, and decided that it should release Oscar Pistorius a few hours earlier than the scheduled release. But, you know, some of the probation conditions as well, quite strict there, Leanne. We know that Oscar Pistorius would need to adhere to, that Oscar Pistorius needs to continue undergoing psychotherapy, as well as that he cannot possess a firearm. He has been allocated a probation officer as well, who would see Oscar Pistorius whenever he or she would want to see Oscar Pistorius. But very interestingly to note also, Leanne, is that with those conditions, while the monitoring and evaluation of Oscar Pistorius will continue whenever and wherever, in 6 months' time, the probation officer would need to give a detailed report to the officials at the Kgoshi prison. And perhaps after that 6 months, the department can decide whether or not to relax Oscar Pistorius' conditions, of course, depending on what the probation officer will detail in that report. But certainly quite a media frenzy outside Oscar Pistorius' uncle's home here in Waterkloof. Not much activity except for the guard that we spoke to a bit here earlier on this morning. No official comment as well coming from Reeva Steenkamp's family. But very briefly yesterday, when I did speak to the family lawyer had essentially said they're quite surprised by the release taking place just a few hours before the scheduled day, which was expected to be today. But nothing from the Pistoriuses at this point. But a senior official within the Correctional Services Department did tell me that Oscar Pistorius was doing fine, but didn't really want to comment much more on Oscar Pistorius' condition. But it's been very quiet. We've been camping outside here since last night. Very little activity. The lights were off when we arrived here last night, and very little activity. Certainly hoping that there will be some comment from the Pistorius family, let alone as well from Reeva Steenkamp's family as well. But I tell you, the world's media is here this morning trying to certainly get the latest in this new twist again of Oscar Pistorius being released a few hours before he was scheduled to do so. But the Correctional Services Department saying, of course, that it believes that everything was done above board.
Right, Chriselda Lewis, thanks very, very much for the update, and we'll certainly be getting many more updates from Chriselda and our other reporters that are out in Waterkloof this morning. As we are hearing this morning, he was released last night after 7:30 in the evening. Processes were followed, and it was up to local management of the facility to decide when he would be released on parole, and that was decided. He would be released last night.